This is our entire solar system, and this is Roblox. More specifically, a little game called Theme Park Tycoon 2. And even though I usually tend to build coasters, today I'm gonna take on a bit bigger of a challenge. A challenge that no one has ever been insane enough to try. Because this is how I built the solar system, just a silly theme park game. Alright, so first I actually needed to figure out the scale of this project, since I wanted this to be a scale-accurate representation of the solar system. And in doing so, I quickly figured out how ridiculous this project was actually going to be. However, if we were to look at the scale of the planets, it would look a bit more like this. Now that I've decided the scale, I can actually start building. And what better to start with than the sun itself, which I had to cut in half because, well, it would literally go over the height. Now, you may be wondering, how am I actually going to be building the sun? Well, thankfully, we can use the circle tool to sort of create a quarter of a sphere, which in this case is our quarter of the sun. The biggest problem is that I ran out of money 5 seconds into doing so. You see, in the beginning of this project, I had almost $1 million. Now, I had $100,000. So, I decided to cut the sun in half yet again. Primarily just because I didn't want to go bankrupt before I managed to finish this project. Now, with the new scale of the sun, it is way easier for me to build it, and as far as the detail on the sun goes, I decided to mostly leave the sun empty as it looked kinda strange with a bunch of detail. However, this means that we can now get started on the first actual planet, Mercury. And instead of going ahead with the classical red Mercury-ish type of colors, I decided that this time I was going to go for a more blue-ish look. And this really ended up looking so good, primarily just because it looked so distinct from the other planets. But now we can move on to Venus, which I placed a sphere and then put lines on it. And I also did a rather similar thing with the Earth, where I placed a sphere and placed a bunch of spheres on it to make the countries. And then I did another similar thing with Mars, where I placed a bunch of random dots on the field instead. And now it's time for the big guy, or maybe I should say big guys. No, seriously, Jupiter and Saturn are ridiculous. When I first learned what a gas giant was, I thought to myself, man, how big could that possibly be? Well, turns out I heavily underestimated the power of a gas giant. Now, for those that don't know what a gas giant is, it's essentially just a tinier planet surrounded by a gigantic amount of gas, which makes the planet huge. Seriously, when I first made Jupiter, it was almost as expensive as the sun. But eventually, I managed to figure out a way to make things cheaper, and I also managed to get this planet out of the way. However, Saturn was not gonna be as cheap, since this planet contains a bunch of rings which I also have to make, and that definitely make this planet like 5 times more expensive. In fact, I had to AFK for more money just so I can move Saturn from one location to another. Okay, now let's talk about your mom. Just kidding. Uranus, which is literally a sphere with no detail. And now for the final planet, Neptune, which was gonna be rather easy to build. So, are we done? Well, not really. Alright, so not only was I going to be building all of the planets and the one star within the solar system, but I also wanted to build all of the moons, which turned out to be ridiculously ambitious, given the fact that apparently planets like Saturn and Jupiter have like 97 and 146 moons, with the total amount of moons in the current solar system that are currently recorded being 290. So I guess let's start with Jupiter's 97 moons. Now, at this point, I decided, screw that, I'm just gonna build all of the notable moons that have a name, essentially. So, for Jupiter, I decided to build Europa, Gemini, and Callisto. Why are these names so hard to pronounce? For Saturn, I decided to build only Titan, which, fun fact, apparently it's got liquid methane on its surface, which I'm pretty sure is the same stuff as cow farts. For Uranus, I built the ones that were named after Shakespeare scenes, and for Neptune, I built one of the 16 moons, that being Triton. For Mars, I built Phobos and Deimos. which are apparently asteroids that the planet caused. And finally, for Earth, since Mercury and Venus both don't have any moons, I built the moon. So, is this it? Oh yeah, there's one more thing I gotta add. Pluto.
A planet so small that for some reason we decided to not even call it a planet. So, there you go. This is the entire solar system, and I guess here is a quick montage of the entire solar system in a silly theme park game.